All right, good afternoon. I'm Tom Salt, a medical doctor and functional medicine provider, and I'm going to talk today about precision Lyme management. So, if you've been told you have Lyme disease and your Lyme disease was treated, but your body never recovered, this video is for you. Lyme disease is not a single infection, it is a prolonged conversation between the microbe and the human body. Most people who get Lyme disease actually fight it off. They're able to simply fight it off like the common cold. In fact, a lot of people who have the quote summer flu, close quote, actually have Lyme disease. But, that select few, 10 to 20% of people who get Lyme disease get the long form, what I call post-acute sequelae of Lyme disease. So this is a prolonged conversation between the microbe and the human body. This conversation changes how the body regulates the immune system, energy output, hormones, and communication, meaning neurotransmitters and all that stuff. And when it breaks down, symptoms persist long after treatment ends. And this can be from a variety of mechanisms that we're going to discuss. So most people are told this means the infection is gone. Once you're treated, the infection is gone, and the problem is something else. Well, that's just not true. That explanation is incomplete at best. At Precision Lyme Management, we build a system to understand what is actually happening, not just how microbes persist, but how the body adapts under this chronic pressure. Our goal is not to attack the body harder. Our goal is to restore coherence so healing can resume. So traditional Lyme care focuses on killing microbes, which seems like a really good idea, right? But that's great in early Lyme, and it often works terrific. But in chronic Lyme, it frequently doesn't work at all. Patients complete antibiotics and remain exhausted, inflamed, foggy, unstable. This doesn't mean treatment failed. It means their model was incomplete. When you take antibiotics, you actually drive the Lyme bugs into what's known as stealth pathology. We're going to talk a lot about that in a few minutes. In chronic Lyme, the infection is only part of the story. The body becomes locked into this defensive state. Inflammation persists even if the microbial activity is very, very low or gone or hiding in stealth mode. Energy downshifts, hormone rhythms are lost, circadian rhythms are lost, and circulation is slow. That's why many of you have your days and nights mixed up, right? You're awake all night, you can't sleep at all, and you just can't be awake in the daytime. And no matter what you try, you can't turn it around. Well, that's part of this dysregulation. The terrain that once protected survival becomes the terrain that sustains illness. Healing requires addressing both sides of this equation, microbial persistence and the host adaptation. So what is this precision Lyme management framework? Precision Lyme management integrates three sort of key maps into one clinical ecosystem. First, there are these 10 domains of stealth pathology. Actually, within those 10 domains, there are probably something like 50 subdomains. These describes how microbes survive long term. We've all heard about biofilms, right? But there's also immune evasion and metabolic dormancy and genetic adaptation. And there are 10 of these sorts of domains. The second are these 14 host post-acute sequelae domains. So these describe how the body adapts to chronic stress, neuroimmune dysregulation, mitochondrial collapse, endothelial injury, meaning the inner lining of the blood vessels, and microclots and all that kind of stuff, hormonal flattening. And then the third area are these 10 phases of healing. And these describe how recovery unfolds when the order is respected. Together, these map out a complete complexity of healing. They show where the loop between the microbe and the host can be interrupted, right? So the 10 healing phases, healing does not happen all at once. It happens in a rhythm, not in a sequence, but in a rhythm. Each phase builds stability that allows the next phase to work. So when we're talking about these healing phases, we're starting out with sort of this orientation and this safety mapping. The nervous system gets locked in fight or flight, and fight or flight prevents healing. So one of the early things we have to do is really help your nervous system come out of fight or flight. Now, people think that this is psychology, but it's not. It's physiology. So this is safety and regulation restores vagal tone and circadian rhythms. The autonomic nervous system also regulates energy and redox restoration. So, reactive oxygen species manufactured in mitochondria, where they're supposed to be making ATP, but instead they're making these oxidative stress molecules. That helps regulate flow and perfusion so that circulation and oxygen delivery is restored. Then immune resolution allows inflammation to complete. The big problem here is that you're locked in this pro-inflammatory cycle. And until we interrupt that, you're just going to have this auto-inflammatory cycle going on. So by allowing the resolution phase or the resolve-in phase to be initiated, we can then normalize, not suppress, but normalize the inflammatory pathways. We need to optimize detoxification and drainage to clear toxins and metabolic debris. Basically, your mitochondria have been locked in this hyper stimulated state, creating all of this toxic byproducts. Think of it like a diesel engine running in a closed garage. It's just going to fill with this smoke. So we have to clear all that stuff out. We have to manage Herxheimer reactions and reactivity modulated around inflammatory flares and all that kind of stuff. Then we need to target pathogens in a way that actually works, right? We have to sort of attack these from all sides, meaning that if you just use, say, an antibiotic like doxycycline as an example, that will actually drive the that will drive the Lyme bugs into stealth pathology. They will make their biofilms bigger and more robust. They will hide inside white blood cells, the very cells that are supposed to be hunting them down and killing them. They'll hide inside them. They'll go inside your connective tissue. They'll cloak themselves in our own proteins and polysaccharides and so on. So we have to target the pathogens in a very comprehensive way. Then we have to resynchronize and restore physiologic rhythm across all of these systems. And then we have to help your body regenerate the damaged tissues. And this is long-term resilience. These phases can't be forced. They have to be allowed. So this is a big program. Again, 10 ideas about stealth pathology that we have to manage, 14 ideas about the aberrant or abnormal physiology that occurs because of the constant pathogenic pressure. And then these 10 healing fields all have to be addressed. And then, of course, we use advanced diagnostic integration, right? We don't just look for Borrelia burgdorferi B31. That's the most common cause of Lyme disease. We look for multiple strains of Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, viruses, other common imitators, and so on. But tests can never be read in isolation, right? The diagnosis of Lyme disease is really a diagnosis of exclusion. We need to make sure we're not making a mistake and it's really something else. And we do that by understanding that you are in a place where you could have been exposed to a tick, right? Well, part of that evidence is the test. And even a test that isn't fully positive doesn't mean you don't have Lyme disease. So it's the whole story. And the results of any test are interpreted through this stealth pathology host post-acute sequelae map, right? Because you can have a suppressed immune response to these bugs as well. So we ask what each finding means from an energy flow, immunity, and regulation point of view. So the diagnosis becomes the beginning of a strategy, not the end of the conversation. So Precision Lyme Management, we place a high priority on coherence of the system. And that really replaces the idea of eradication. Sure, we're going to eradicate the bug, but we're going to do it in the context of building a system that can maintain itself long term. So then energy returns, the microbe loses its advantage, circulation improves, inflammation resolves, and then communication restores and persistence of the bug collapses. Healing is not forced, healing is reorganized. So, Precision Lyme Management is a coherent model for recovery. It integrates biology, ecology, and clinical timing. It honors the intelligence of both the microbe and you, the host. It guides the microbes to eradication, and it guides your physiology back into balance. Healing does not depend on being more aggressive, right? You've all had the herbal program and the antibiotic program and maybe even the IV antibiotic program and the 3 antibiotics at once or 10 things at once or whatever. That's a part of the process, but it's not the solution. The solution depends on precision. It depends on figuring out which of the stealth pathologies are most active and managing those, figuring out where you are in terms of your host post-acute sequelae of infection and where we need to begin in your healing journey. When coherence returns, recovery becomes possible again. All right. So that is the introduction to Precision Lyme Management. Have a great evening.